Good morning. It is Saturday the 6th of July and you are waking up to a brand new weekend with us here on Ireland AM. Don't forget, we're also streaming on the app as well, so even if you're not at home, you can still watch us.
It's coming up. Fair play to Leona Maguire. She's become the first Irish woman to win Ladies European Tour event. We'll be discussing all sporting features in just a little while.
Plus, you may have already brought your own poolside reads, but what about the kids? We're showcasing the top children's books this summer.
And we're taking on the trend that comes around time and time again during the sunnier weather. It's all about the boho trend in fashion today.
Also, the man who helped put Donegal music on the map. Sorry, Daniel. No, Daniel's first.
God. We've got the world tonight.
Let's hold on. Do you know, it was the last song played at my wedding on the dance floor.
Was not.
It was.
Good woman.
I can't wait to
She
tell
was
him.
in Donegal.
I was. Up
All
at
right. Mickey Joe Hart tells us about his German adventures and his graw for the great Cillian Murphy.
And she left showbiz for a whole different set of stars. Made in Chelsea breakout turned astrologist Cathy Dunlop will be here after 11.
Right, let's take a first look at your morning papers. We'll start with the Irish Times, and they lead with Starmer vows to be force for good after a landslide win across Britain. In his opening address, Britain's new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has claimed that his government will serve the people whether you voted for him or not, following his victory against former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. The
front page of the Irish Independent opens with Starmer win will ease Ireland's migrant crisis as the new Labour government is set to ditch the controversial Rwanda migrant deportation scheme, which is said to be one of the key links behind Ireland's recent increase of asylum seekers.
Over to the Irish Examiner, which goes with reset for Anglo-Irish relations. The paper writes that the Labour landslide has renewed hopes for bilateral links, with Taoiseach Simon Harris calling for a great reset of relations.
Moving on to the tabloids now, the Herald reads Dubliners sent sick messages to Holly Stalker, reporting that convicted stalker Mark Mulligan exchanged sick messages with a security guard who plotted to rape and kidnap Holly Willoughby.
The Irish Sun leads with Holly's Irish stalker. Gardaí are investigating after a convicted Irish stalker exchanged messages with a man who plotted to kidnap, assault and murder telly star Holly Willoughby.
The Daily Star writes Lotto winner dies in Turkey tragedy, writing that lottery winner Michael Mouse Kelly, who scooped a jackpot of more than £4 million almost 30 years ago, has tragically died on holiday.
And finally, the Irish Daily Mail reads RTE resisted €150,000 cap on exit packages. RTE's Director General, Kevin Backhurst, claims that the government's proposed exit package cap would only attract their lower paid staff to voluntarily make themselves redundant, leaving the broadcaster with, quote, a load of management without people to manage.
Now, a bit later, we'll be talking astrology with former Made in Chelsea star Cathy Dunlop. So it got me thinking about star signs. Are you into star signs?
Not really.
I am when they say good things. I'm not into those.
Yeah. Well, they're going to do both.
Yeah, I have your star signs here. We're going to see, do the traits align with yourselves? We have some positives and some negatives, OK?
I'm goose now, because no one ever likes my star sign, ever.
What are you, Elaine?
I'm a Leo.
You're a Leo. And, OK, do you know what? We'll go to Leos first. So, Leos are infamously dramatic.
What? Dramatic?
Well,
I don't think so.
OK.
They're fiery and vivacious and love to celebrate themselves. I didn't
it's all about me.
I didn't write this, can I just say? I didn't write this.
I don't know what you're thinking about.
Okay,
I'm the most modest of people.
So your positive traits.
Okay.
You're creative.
That's,
Tick.
Yeah.
You're generous.
Yeah.
Tick. You're passionate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ready?
Loyal.
Loyal, like a lion, like a Leo. Negatives.
I can even guess what they are.
Go on.
I am selfish.
Self-centered is the first one.
Yeah, self-centered. I am... what else? I am too sensitive.
No, that's not one here. So the other ones are lazy and arrogant. But again, I didn't write these. This is what the
I am a bit lazy. I am a bit lazy.
Oh God, I wouldn't have thought so.
Yeah.
The early start.
I'm a sleepy girl.
Oh right, that's not a crime, Elaine.
Yeah. Like a cat. You have little naps all the time.
Look, you're like you're lying.
Yeah.
She's right,
Let's move on to Martin.
See, it's all about me. I'm taking over this whole discussion. Martin, let me shut up, please.
What are you?
We have 20 seconds.
Martin?
I'm joking. We don't. Go on.
Martin's a Capricorn. Capricorns love order and rules. They like having strict boundaries and they're good with money, apparently.
Right.
So your positive traits are you're hardworking and disciplined.
Right.
Yeah. You're fully in control of your own destiny.
Yeah, sometimes.
And you always get what you set your mind to.
Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, so tick, tick, tick. Yeah. Okay, on to the negatives.
Yeah, I can imagine what these are. Go on.
Stubborn.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
And know-it-all? I
wouldn't think so, no.
And then the last one is unforgiving, and I couldn't imagine.
Oh no! If you cross me, or if you cross somebody that I really love, I will remember it forever.
Right.
Yeah.
So you are truly a Capricorn.
Yeah. Well, I feel most of those things. Yeah.
There's always one or two that you're not.
Yeah. What about you?
So I'm a Sagittarius.
Go on.
Sagittarius. They know no bounds. They're always chasing after adventures and are independent. So I would agree with that.
Yeah.
My positive traits are generous.
Yeah.
Idealistic. And great sense of humour.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, I didn't write this. Unfortunately, we've no time to go through my negative traits. It's really unfortunate. Yeah.
Okay, it's terrible because you could be quite
there
impatient.
Are no negatives.
I'll go on then. I'll give them impatient. I will say anything no matter how undiplomatic, which I actually don't agree with. I think I'm quite diplomatic.
Yeah.
No, you're not. And that's what I love about your blunt. It's great.
Okay, so we literally fit exactly into our...
Maybe there is
arrogant and lazy, me.
Maybe there is something to it, all right. Okay. Anyway, what's yours? Let us know about it, about you. Anyway, we've got Caggie coming in later, so we'll talk about that some more when she arrives. Up next, all today's top sports stories, including that win for Leona Maguire at the Ladies European Tour event. We'll see you in just a second.
All this week on Ireland AM, we've teamed up with Virgin Media Ireland to give away an amazing prize to one lucky viewer. To celebrate National Play Day this July, Virgin Media are inviting you to find your play at the Virgin Media Playhouse, a game-changing play experiment in the Science Gallery from the 5th to the 6th of July. Register to come along by scanning the QR code. And if that's not enough, it's playtime for one lucky winner of a fabulous 7-night Mediterranean voyage for 2 people. For all the latest offers to set sail on Virgin Voyages, contact your favourite travel agents or check out virginvoyages.com. For your chance to win, just answer this question. What are the bedrooms on a cruise ship called? Is it A, cabins, or B, galley? To enter, call 1550 999 333 or text WIN to 57199. Best of luck.
Welcome back. It's time to talk sports, and we're joined by journalist Sinead Keogh. But first, we'll take a pick of the sports headlines. First, the back pages, starting with Gonaldo. CR7 crashes out as French are spot on after sinker, and that's the Sun Sport referring to Portugal's Euro 2024 exit to France on penalties. Next up, there's the Irish Times, and Spain get away with losing their way as Marino breaks German hearts, and that's after Spain knocked tournament hosts Germany out of the competition yesterday. And last but not least, we have the Irish Independent staying with the topic of Spain and Germany as they go with Spain's extra special moment. Marino finds late winner to dump out hosts Germany. But we're going to start closer to home and the incredible story of Leona Maguire becoming the first Irish woman to win on the European Tour. And good morning to you, Sinead.
Good morning.
What a way to win.
Yeah.
This is just incredible from Leona Maguire.
Yeah, it is. And she was leading the pack the whole way through the tournament, but she had been struggling on the very last day, the final round. But yeah, she came up trumps there on the 18th hole. I think what she needed was to get the birdie, but she went and she got the eagle. Eagle. Calm, cool and collected. Yeah. She's just amazing. She's brilliant.
Okay. She's one of the stars of golf as far as Ireland are concerned, but to do it so dramatic, it's the type of stuff you'd expect to see in a movie.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that you'd expect to see in a film, but I think that her star has just really risen over the last couple of years. Everyone is talking about the woman from Cavan, Leona Maguire. Yeah. But yeah, to do it in that fashion on the final day, first Irish woman as well to win a European tournament. So yeah, it's great. History maker now to add to everything else that she's done.
She needed a point and came up with an eagle on the last hole. Just Brilliant stuff. Anyway, congratulations, Leon. We've got a great day of sport coming up, a great weekend of sport. And we'll start with the first of the hurling semi-finals. It's Kilkenny against Clare. This the third year in a row they've played each other?
This is the trilogy, as they're calling it now. Yeah, so third year in a row for Clare and Kilkenny. I'm really looking forward to this game. I know that we've two semi-finals now to look forward to this weekend. We've Cork and Limerick tomorrow. But I think that this is the game of the weekend. I think that this is the one that's going to be the most closely contested. You know, you have Tony Kelly returning. I know that this is his third game back now, but they had been missing him for most of the championship. But I think he's kind of on a bit of a run now. He did well the last day against Wexford. So yeah, really looking forward to this game, Martin. I think it should provide the goods, hopefully.
Yeah. She said that through gritted teeth. He did well against Wexford.
But yeah, I suppose that's something else just to comment on as well. That game against Wexford, they couldn't really take too much from that because Rory O'Connor was sent off just before the break. Yeah. So they ran away with it then in the second half, and it's kind of the same for Kilkenny as well. Like, they absolutely obliterated Dublin in the Leinster final. So not too many lessons can be learned for either team in the kind of the build up to this match. But hopefully we will see a good contest between.
Okay. What's your head telling you?
I don't know. I have a funny feeling about Clare today.
Okay.
Even though, you know, you could say that like Kilkenny have won the last two meetings in the semi-final the last couple of years, but I think all the pressure is on Clare. It's Brian Lohan's fifth year in charge now, and they've been starved of silverware, Clare have. So, you know, I think it's crunch time now. They have to do it. So I'd probably say Clare for today.
You're saying that you think this is of the two games this weekend, this will be the closest. So do you think that Limerick will kick on tomorrow?
I think they will.
Revenge.
I think they will, yeah. And look, it's been a brilliant run for Cork. And I think most maybe neutrals would really like Cork to do it, because especially for Patrick Horgan to go on and eventually win an All-Ireland. But I just can't see them doing it tomorrow.
Okay, all right. Well, we will wait and see. That still, Cork, the only team to beat them in the championship so far this year. So
yeah, and what a win that was. But you'd hope that
they really needed that.
They really needed it, but you'd hope that that's not going to be Cork's highlight. You know, of the year. Hopefully they can push on, but I can't see it.
They really need to win tomorrow as well. So who knows? We're going to wait and see. We got three ladies football quarterfinals and a couple of relegation playoffs going on today. But we focus on the quarterfinals. 3 games today, starting with Cork against Waterford.
Yeah.
That's going to be a tasty game.
I
think all the games today will be good.
All of the games started. That's probably, again, I spoke about the most closely contested game. I reckon that probably is, out of the 3 that we're going to talk about, probably is going to be the most closely contested game. But then we have the All-Ireland champions Dublin coming up against Galway as well. I'm sure you're holding out hope for a Dublin win.
Hopefully there's no viruses in the camp, in the ladies' camp. Anyway, but we'll see. Look, we'll see Galway got their win last week because they deserved it. But yeah, it's
And Dublin are in flying form at the moment as well. And Carla Rowe, you know, she's the captain and she's in superb form at the minute too. But yeah, Galway haven't beaten them in the championship since 2005. They do have a hard task.
Last week was 90-year gap, and that was closed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know it's a while since Galway got a win against the Dublin ladies.
But you never know. Hopefully it'll be close between the two teams.
Yes, that's a 7:30 throw-in on Parnell Park. There's a game in between the two, and this is Kerry against Meath. And you know, there's a couple of people coming back for Meath, and this is going to make it quite a game.
It is, yeah. I think that's the story of the weekend. Is with regard to these quarterfinals, we're looking at the return of one Miss Vicky Wall. So yeah, she'll definitely make a huge difference to Meath, and like she's probably one of the most prolific ladies Gaelic footballers in the country, and she's just so talented. We've seen her playing, throw her hand to rugby, to AFL. You know, now she's returning to the Meath ladies Gaelic football team as well. So yeah, hopefully that should provide a tasty game later on.
Yeah. And the Armagh Mayo quarter-final, that's been played tomorrow. But yeah, a full day of ladies' quarter-final action today that we can look forward to. There's a rugby match going on today as well.
There is.
It's been a little while since we saw the Green of Ireland up against South Africa. They haven't met since the World Cup. But Andy Farrell, you know, talk about something unexpected. Jamie Osborne at number 15.
Yeah, at number 15. I think that was a surprise to most people to see that he's going to be giving Jamie Osborne his debut. But yeah, what an exciting prospect for you know, the 22-year-old guy from Naas. It's really exciting. Now, there's a couple of challenges that he awaits now. It's his debut for Ireland, but not only that, he's playing out of position as well. So, but it just goes to show Andy Farrell obviously does have a lot of trust in him that he's going to come up with the goods. So hopefully,
but you've seen something. He's played, like you said, in a few different positions for Leinster, but he has obviously seen something in him that says, yes, he can do a job. And it's not like he hasn't got options with Hugo Keenan now. There are other players that could go in there.
Yeah, but I suppose that's like the point of test matches like this. It's to try and, you know, blood new players and to build depth within your squad. So it's kind of using this opportunity to the optimum that they can. So like that's what test matches are all about. So looking forward to this later on.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and there's an opportunity there to see how players will fare in these settings. And anyway, we wish Jamie the very, very best in that. Let's move on to the Euros. I felt sorry for Cristiano Ronaldo, you know, because the guy's a lovely guy. I had the pleasure of meeting him once, and really lovely guy. And he hasn't had the best of tournaments. And it was sad to see Portugal. Well, for me, it was sad to see Portugal go out yesterday.
Yeah, and I know that he's been heavily criticised, you know, throughout the tournament, that he hasn't been performing to his optimum level. But the man is 39 years of age. He's been playing at the top level for 20 years. You're right. I actually felt quite sorry for him as well. I think that, like, a lot of people questioned his selection. And maybe rightly so, but then you have to look at the fanfare that he brings with him, at the leadership qualities that he has. Do you know, like, and he's just, to think that possibly this is going to be the last time we see him in a Portugal jersey is a sad thought.
It is sad. And of course, we've got Messi at the Copa America, and he's not having a great time either. So it could be that these two greats are reaching the end of their international careers. A good win for Spain. They really had to earn the win against Germany, but they did.
They did, yeah, attacking football. Great to see them progress. But then sad also to see Germany exit at this stage, because they've had such a great tournament.
They've been one of the teams of the tournament without question. We've run out of time, but sure, we'll chat again tomorrow about the England, Switzerland and Turkey and Netherlands games. But for now, Sinead, thanks so much.
Thanks, Martin.
Good to see you. Up next, summer reads to keep the kids occupied at the pool on your fortnight in the sun. We'll see you soon for that.
You're very welcome back to Ireland AM. Now, with school on break and summer in full swing, it can be tough to squeeze reading into your child's busy schedule of fun activities.
Children's author Caroline Busher joins us today to unveil her must-read book picks. Good to see you.
Hi, I'm delighted to be here today with my favourite recommendations for the summer.
You're like a ray of sunshine this morning.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you.
And a dress full of books.
A dress full of books. Of course, I'm on brand. yeah.
All right, you've got some picks, and it's picks for all ages.
For all ages, yes. And there's some brilliant Irish authors and illustrators out there that I wanted to highlight today.
Okay,
so the first one, yes, is Little Irish Folklore Friends by Niamh Donlan, and it's actually illustrated by Brian Fitzgerald. And when we think of our little Irish folklore creatures, this is the best book ever for young readers, because we have the most amazing names. We have Betty the Banshee, and we have Sean the Selkie, and we have beautiful rhyming words in this book. So it's great for all ages, really, but for younger readers, it's brilliant. And it's inspired by the National Folklore Collection of Ireland. So it's a really good book with our heritage and folklore in mind as well.
So it's friendly pukas, friendly banshees.
Yes. Yeah, not a bit frightening. Loads of fun. And like I say, picking up on the Irish heritage, which is great.
Banshees get a bad rap sometimes.
They do. They need a new PR
Yes, they
agent.
definitely do. Yeah, exactly.
Betty sounds like a very nice banshee.
She does, certainly. Yeah, exactly.
And
then
Liam the Leprechaun's in there.
Liam the Leprechaun, what more could you ask for? And then we have Chasing the Shy-Town by Irish author Erica
Need to be careful saying that.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know, yeah. And this one's brilliant. Senan doesn't like adventure, and he stays, and he'd rather stay in his bedroom and watch the world drift by.
Okay.
But one day he's looking on the horizon and he notices a hilltop town that vanishes and comes back every now and again, and he's intrigued. So together with his neighbour and his grandma, they go on an adventure. They meet a boy made out of paper, they meet a beetle that has these really unusual abilities, and just has an absolutely amazing time. And that book is really good for younger readers, say 5 to 8 age group. Brilliant, yeah.
But it's lovely, a mysterious town with a big secret.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, having adventure and mystery at that age is fabulous.
But Granny's involved.
And grannies. And actually, some of these books have all got grandparents in them as well. And actually, a lot of grandparents ask me about recommending books for kids. So it's nice to have them in the stories. And that's illustrated by Tony Gamis as well.
Okay, so our first two books are aimed at
The younger readers, yes.
We're going slightly older now. We're going
Yes.
8 to 12-year-olds. So
Yes.
tell us about this.
Oh, so I love this book. It's called The Weather Girls by Sarah Webb, and it's 1944. And Grace Devlin is in Blackshot Lighthouse with her family, where she lives, when a German plane crashes, and herself and her friend Sibby go and rescue the German pilot. And then what happens is they get embroiled in a lot of mystery, really, because the Met Office in England are getting in touch to see wanting weather reports every day.
So this is 1944.
1944, and it's
we know
actually
what's happening.
Yeah, exactly, and it's inspired by true events as well.
Yeah.
World War
which is
II,
in World War
of course,
II.
wow.
So that's a really interesting one. And I love historical fiction, so that's a great book.
Well, it was a weather report from Mayo that delayed the D-Day landings by a day.
There you
Imagine.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there we are.
so
No, so that's a really good
little
one.
bit of
And I
historical
love
fiction.
when you get the education into a book as well.
Exactly. I write historical fiction myself, so a lot of the teachers say the kids are learning history without realising it almost by reading, which is great.
Okay, the next one is for 6+, and there's an evil duck involved.
Oh, my goodness.
I love the illustration on this as well.
This is
Watch out,
amazing.
I'm Fearless Frank Duck.
Yes, it's great. It's Evil Duck and the Feather of Fortune by Chris Judge. Now, this is taking the world by storm because the illustrations in it are amazing. It's very accessible. Sometimes kids pick up a book, and if it's too much reading in it, it loses them, especially kids that struggle with literacy. The illustrations are gorgeous, and it's about a little duck. Oh, no, actually, it's about two twins.
Look, I don't know what camera you want me to use, but it's lovely. Look at that.
It's amazing. It's about these twins who go into their granddad's attic and they discover a duck frozen in a chamber. They press the defrost button. Yes.
Don't hit the button.
They always do. And the duck comes to life.
It's like Lex Luthor or something like that.
Exactly. The duck comes to life, and they get embroiled in amazing adventures to try and help their granddad again, who used to be a superhero duck himself. So it's just a laugh and brilliant story.
And Evil Duck was his nemesis.
Yes.
And now
so they have to help him because
youthful
granddad's too
evil
old
duck.
now, Martin.
Yeah.
So he needs the kids
And
to
Evil
help
Duck
him.
is still of that age.
He is unreal. He's everywhere.
Love the brain power that comes up with these ideas, and we'll be picking your brains on that in a little while.
Perfect.
And lastly,
Last but not least, this one's for the older readers. So I'm thinking here for the teenagers. So this is by Sam Blake, and it's called Something's About to Blow Up. And it's set in a chemistry lab in a school where there's an explosion. Now, first they think it's a chemistry experiment gone wrong, but then the guards get involved and they think there's a bomb been blown up in the school. So they have to, and there's 6 girls injured, taken to hospital. So it's very serious, this one. And
it's for 15 plus,
15 plus,
yeah.
and it's brilliant. And it's literally to find out what's happened and what's caused this bomb to go off in their school. So it's a real mystery with a bit of a sinister twist in it.
Yes.
okay, we need to talk about you for a minute.
Oh.
Because you've got a book coming out too.
I have, yes.
And this is a world exclusive, everybody.
It is, and do you know what? When I was asked where did I want to reveal the cover, it had to be for Ireland AM viewers,
thank you for
because
that.
and you
Thank
guys are
you.
amazing. So this is my new book, and I'm really delighted to show the cover for it. It's The Boy Who Slipped Through Time, and it's set in 1848. And Seamus O'Flaherty is a young boy living through the famine. His family are facing eviction. They might have to go on the coffin ship to America, and he teams up with Florence Darlington, who's the landlord's daughter, and they actually find a portal tomb. And when they enter it, they slip through time, and they travel back in time to the time of the Spanish Armada.
Wow.
So it's about friendship, bravery and, yeah, a lot of history.
And is one of the Spanish lads involved?
One of the Spanish boys, Maximo, a sailor. They have to rescue him.
A Spanish sailor, it's like the snapper.
Yeah, so anyway, but Maximo he comes back into the famine times as well, and they literally have a ball slipping through time and travelling through time. They find out it's a very exciting thing to do. So I'm really delighted to show my book cover today.
I know.
Well, thank you for doing that.
You give an age recommendation in all of these, and I know publishers generally do, but I have to say I love young adult fiction. I love children's fiction. I absorb it all because no matter what age you are, it's brilliant. But if you are someone buying these books, is it a good gauge really for what they're able for the themes in these books even?
Yes, that's
someone
it.
Like one of them is 15 plus,
yes,
one is 8 to 12, so you don't want to be reading that to a 4-year-old maybe.
That's it.
No,
it is very good to look at the guidelines from publishers. The only thing I will say, my only caveat, is that picture books are for everyone. So like no matter even if an adult, some of the picture books I pick up are just beautifully illustrated and gorgeous, so I love them. But yeah, it is good to look at the guidelines. And actually, a lot of kids think with teenage books that they're always, you know, very like fantasy based, but as I've shown with Sam Blake's book there's a lot of really good intrigue and realistic stories that are relatable to kids as well.
So put the phones away, encourage them to read.
Yes, exactly.
But make it fun.
Make it fun, that's the thing. Reading should be a choice and not a chore. And I think that with kids, they're reading so much in school now that they need to have a bit of fun. And I always say to mums and dads, don't worry what they're reading as long as they're reading something.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to feel the pressure to always get them a big book to read. If they're reading magazines, they're reading, you know, whatever, it's actually good. Also, if they join the local library, there's lots of fun things there around reading.
Libraries are amazing places.
They are amazing, yeah. So there's lots to, you know, there's so much to do, and yeah, it's brilliant. There's so many great books out there as well.
Thank you so much once again, and thank you for the world exclusive you shared with us. And best of luck when the publish date in October, I believe.
Thank you so much.
Come back and talk to us then.
Thank you.
All books we discussed are available now online or in all good bookshops, while Caroline's own book, The Boy Who Slipped Through Time, is available to pre-order from Eason's.
Now, after the break, we're talking fashion. It's all about easy breezy boho. That's next. You're very welcome back to Ireland AM. Now, one of the biggest summer trends of the past 2 decades is boho, and 2024 is absolutely no different at all.
And joining us to add some easy breezy boho to our wardrobes is stylist Emily O'Donnell. Good morning, Emily.
Good morning, ladies. How are you?
So we're going boho, like Glastonbury, think Sienna Miller, all that kind of vibes.
Yeah, we're going kind of boho prints. And can I just say it's lovely to see Elaine back.
You didn't miss me.
I missed you. I missed all the behind-the-scenes chats and, of course, on-camera banter.
OK, over to the fashion.
So Bohemian Prints is where it's at today. We are seeing them a lot on the catwalks for 2024, but they actually started back in London in the 70s with Ozzy Clark and Celia Birthwell. And to be honest, I don't really think they went anywhere. They were always simmering away, perhaps dominated by bigger trends, but they're back and they're actually really wearable. So I just want to remind people how great they are and how easy they are to style.
Super.
Easy breezy.
So
we'll
I
start
have
now with
some gorgeous clothes here today. I'm going to start off with the earrings, which are from Irish designer Bláithín Ennis, who of course is an award-winning designer. I'm delighted to be showcasing her brand new collection here today. It is Sea of Stars, inspired by her trip to the Maldives, and these are all made by hand from glass crystal, and they are also sustainable, so they're made to order, really special pieces. And it's the necklace and earrings that we're having a look at there. And this gorgeous outfit that we are seeing here is from newmood.ie. Newmood, of course, based in Wexford, owned by two great ladies, Patsy and Michelle, and they really have the eye for something different. I think if you're going to do a boho print, you need to pick whether you're doing it on the top or the bottom. Okay. In this look, Not both.
That's what I tend to do sometimes.
Sometimes it can go a little bit too far, but I'm going top to toe prints, so like I'm not judging anybody, but just if you're getting an introduction to the trend, it's better to go gently. So we've got this gorgeous jacket. Let's face it, the Irish summer isn't giving this year. So this is the perfect trans-seasonal piece from Street 1. I've styled it with this gorgeous 100% silk top from Newmood and this beautiful bag that we're seeing now. This is actually Pom Pom London's first collaboration with an Irish boutique boutique. So New Mood are delighted to be stocking these in lots of different colours. They're 100% leather and they come with 2 straps and they're just very cool. But what I love about these trousers is the boho print. I think it's a really nice way to do it. They have an elastic waist, so they're fashionable and functional. And they also have lining that goes down to just above the knee, which I think is so important for women with underwear concerns. Let's face it, nobody wants a pair of see-through trousers, and the ladies with New Mood really consider what suits women's bodies and what they want.
Particularly if they're a plain print, you don't want the cellulite bumps. I don't know what you probably don't have them.
You don't.
Oh my God, at my age, but yeah.
And what's really interesting about prints is they actually disguise from looking at body shape. You look at the print and you look at the outfit more, whereas if you wear a block colour, you're probably going to be more conscious of people's figure. So it's just something to bear in mind.
This block colour is a lovely look.
Isn't it? So this gorgeous look that we're seeing here on Ursula is from Isabella's.ie. Isabella's is a really, really cool online boutique run by a great Irish lady, and she just has an eye for all those kind of Isabel Marant inspired pieces. You know, that French cool boho girl. This is how to do it right. I am in love with this jacket.
And the boho look is the beading there in the side, the Aztec beading, which is, it's a subtle nod to it, but I mean, we can see in the waistcoat as well after the jacket, you have the same kind of theme.
You're so right, Elaine. You don't have to go mad. You can bring in the subtle references, and these are pieces that won't date. They're both 100% cotton. We've got the boho print going down the sleeve, and again with the waistcoat.
Yes,
this is giving a bit of Woodstock now. We're thinking Glasgow vibes. I love it. So there is a lot of concerts on. I'm going to the Kings of Leon tonight myself. There's a lot of gigs, festivals, outdoor, you know, events, and people want fashionable, functional clothes. The waistcoat is 100% cotton. Isn't it gorgeous? I have to say, I love this look. And Katie from Isabella's just picked such a nice edit of things you won't see on the high street. Again, the gorgeous vest and the trousers that we are seeing there are the mom jean shape. They are, again, 100% cotton, really made. And I have to say, the price points are really keen for the quality. And I've styled it there again with 2 great pieces of jewellery that we saw from Blauheen.
100% cotton is sustainable as well, and we're all about that at the moment.
And I think women need to wear cotton clothes. There are plenty of reasons for that, which I won't go into. But breathability is where it's at.
Now, fine and flowy and baggy.
So we're kind of going a little bit more. We're sexing it up a little bit. Leopard print originated in 1947 on the Christian Dior catwalks, and it was synonymous with that kind of, you know, cool boho London vibe. It's been hijacked a little bit along the way, but it's back, and it is the print of the season. So I'm going to start off with the beautiful choker. I had to style this look with something really cool and edgy, and this is another one of Blauheen's incredible collections. Blauheen's jewellery have been seen at the Oscars, they've been seen on red carpets all over the world, and she's really flying the flag for Irish design.
I mean, people might think it's expensive for a choker, but these are all designer works.
That's it, Elaine, and they're handmade, and you're getting something special that's going to last in your wardrobe forever. I kept the styling quite simple because I wanted the jewellery to really pop. So this is another gorgeous top from Isabella's.ie. It's 100% cotton. It's got that kind of boho look, a little bit smocky. It's got the really kind of cool puff sleeves, and it's, again, really, really easy to style. This will take you anywhere and it won't date.
But that tie front is everywhere at the moment,
isn't it?
Yeah,
and it's giving that subtle nod to bohemian without, you know, verging into fancy dress. Again, we're seeing the gorgeous bracelet there from Blauheen, but I think the
trousers are the
centerpiece.
Loving them.
I love a pair of leopard trousers. These are comfortable, they're cool, you can wear them in so many different ways, and I think they are kind of maybe the piece of the season. We've seen a steer away from the skinny legs. We're looking at maybe the wider legs, and Isabella's just have such a nice selection of boho pieces. So Yumiko is closing us out in this gorgeous dress from New Mood. We are going for kind of a 70s, slight nod to flower power, really comfortable dress. What I love about this dress is it actually has elastic built into the back, so it doesn't just have the button-down detail. And I wanted to add a little bit of boho chic to the look by adding in these pieces of jewellery. Again, these are from Blauheen's new collection, all hand-beaded. They're giving that kind of boho vibe, and these are pieces that can take you from day to night. What I love about her jewellery is they're not just nighttime and they're not just daytime.
They're statement pieces.
Statement pieces and all handmade. But the dress is just a no-brainer. It's comfortable, it's chic, it's stylish. The women at New Mood really know what they're doing, and they've a great edit of both casual and dressy clothes. But what I love about this is It's just really friendly, and they also have their bra fitting service. So the fitting room, you can get measured for your bra.
We all know how important that is.
I need to come in here someday because I think I'm wearing the wrong size bra.
Emily, thank you so much for coming in today. That was beautiful.
Thanks, ladies.
Now, still to come, Mickey Joe Hart will be here and we're serving up meatballs for lunch. Stay with us. We're live until 12.
Okay, let's take another look at your morning papers. We'll start with the Irish Times. They lead with Starmer vows to be force for good after landslide wins across Britain. In his opening address, Britain's new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has claimed that his government will serve the people whether you voted for him or not, following his victory against former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
The front page of the Irish Independent opens with Starmer win will ease Ireland's migrant crisis as the new Labour government is set to ditch the controversial Rwanda migrant deportation scheme, which is said to be one of the key links behind Ireland's recent increase of asylum seekers.
Over to the Irish Examiner, which goes with reset for Anglo-Irish relations. The paper writes that the Labour landslide has renewed hopes for bilateral links, with Taoiseach Simon Harris calling for a great reset of relations.
Moving on to the tabloids now, the Herald reads, Dubliner sent sick messages to Holly Stalker, reporting that convicted stalker Mark Mulligan exchanged sick messages with a security guard who plotted to rape and kidnap Holly Willoughby.
Their Sun also leads with this story, with Holly's Irish stalker. Their headline, Gardaí are investigating after a convicted Irish stalker exchanged messages with a man who plotted to kidnap, assault and murder Telly star Holly Willoughby.
The Daily Star writes, lotto winner dies in Turkey tragedy, writing that lottery winner Michael Mouse Kelly, who scooped a jackpot of over £4 million almost 30 years ago, has tragically died on holiday.
And finally, the Irish Daily Mail reads, RTE resisted €150,000 cap on exit packages. RTE's Director General, Kevin Backhurst, claims that the government's proposed exit package cap would only attract their lower paid staff to voluntarily make themselves redundant, leaving the broadcaster with, quote, a load of management without people to manage.
Now, guys, there's probably no point in even talking about this because everyone knows it's International Fried Chicken Day.
Yay!
Happy day to all who celebrate.
Did you put your decorations up?
Yes, drumsticks all over the house,
That's
right?
it. That's all right.
So it's always observed on the 6th of July every year, right? It's thought that the practice of deep frying chicken and fat was brought to the US by Scottish immigrants, but then it was adopted, you know, by the southern US states, particularly by Kentucky. Kentucky, which brought us the institution, which is KFC.
To be fair, the Scottish deep fry everything in fat.
They do.
do.
Mars bars
Chocolate
and all.
bars.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with you, lads.
Are you partial to some fried chicken?
Fried chicken on its own, maybe, but I haven't been the biggest fried chicken fan. I take the skin off and I'd eat the chicken inside, which apparently defeats the purpose of it.
I thought the skin was the best part.
Yeah.
You?
Yeah, I'd kind of remove the skin as well. But do you know what? It's International Fried Chicken Day, so
it is. So we're going to try.
Don't undress the chicken.
And this is the Irish variation is of course the classic.
Oh, and I never got you anything. Sorry, Shiva.
Every year he does this to me. Every year on International Fried Chicken Day, he forgets it.
Because you love fried chicken, as we all know.
My stocking was empty this morning, would you believe?
I'm very sorry to hear that.
And Martin, you're going to have to try the chicken fillet roll.
Do you know what? It's a tough job.
It is.
It's a really tough job.
My relationship with the chicken fillet roll is historically bad, so I think I'll leave it to you.
Oh, really?
Your relationship only started a few months ago with it, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I had a dodgy one on air and it wasn't great. But apparently I still have to try the centre one. Apparently they're the best, but I don't know.
Well, Martin.
Talk amongst yourselves, everyone.
He's enjoyed it too. We'll let you have your moment with your fried chicken
International
roll. Fried Chicken Day.
Fried Chicken Day.
It's some people's favourite day of the year.
Our producer Billy made that with his own fair hands. He got up
Nobody told me
at
that.
2 o'clock this morning. He baked it, he cooked it, he breaded the chicken himself, he grew the lettuce overnight. 'Twas a miracle.
I thought it was made in the shop, but Billy made it, didn't he?
I'm only joking. You won't get food poisoning or
Oh, I'm sure. Anybody watching at home, put the toilet paper in the freezer. This could become dangerous. Very, very dangerous. You know the way people go to... sorry about that. You know the way people go to Australia?
Yeah.
And while they're there, they're off and they do the year away thing. And they get saying you get photographs back of the old koala bears in their arms.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's going to be a thing of the past.
Why?
Well, according to this, the Lone Pie Koala Sanctuary in Queensland has decided to end the photo experience for visitors. And this is after 97 years. Now, the koalas, they're carrying a few diseases, those koalas.
Chlamydia.
Yeah, they're
chlamydia.
riddled.
Yeah. So you need to be very careful when you're handling them. Do people know this before they pick them up?
But you know, koalas are the stupidest animals on planet Earth. They have the smoothest brains. Honestly, you know brains, they have the little ripples and that's where you store information. Koalas have the smoothest brains.
You could say they were stoned.
No, they're just
Because the
stupid.
eucalyptus leaves makes them kind of
You could
dopey.
say that they aren't qualified.
OK, what has happened in my absence? She's after getting your dodgy joke, Jean. I leave for 3 months and look at...
No, but they actually are stupid.
They are.
That wasn't part of the joke.
Anyway,
they actually
but they are stressed, and that's why they're bringing it to an end. They're saying that they get stressed with all the handling. You see, they can't get any good out of them at the end of the day. They go, no, I'm not going to bed. Leave me alone. Like kids.
They're asleep most of the time. I've held a koala. They're very dopey.
Yeah, but she just said that.
Yeah. Very stupid animals.
There you go.
God love them.
Anyway, if you are heading down there, you'll get a close-up experience, but not an actual photograph. So
Don't
just
get too
to let
close
you
because
know.
you get disease.
OK, yeah, that too. OK. Up next, after he's probably eaten his international fried chicken, Donegal music royalty, Mickey Joe Hart, will be joining us. The girls are very excited about this. We'll see you in a few minutes.
Very welcome back. Now, I have to say, I feel really guilty that Shiva's not on this item because she's dancing over the other side of the studio. We have a serious fangirl situation going on at the moment. Anyway, yes, it is hard to believe, but it's 21 years since Mickey Joe Hart became an overnight superstar when he took We've Got the World Tonight to within a few whiskers away from Eurovision glory.
By the way, he hasn't changed. He still looks the same. Donegal's finest is still going strong with his latest song, an ode to Ireland's Oscar-winning hero, Cillian Murphy. Have a look at this.
Good man, Cillian, you done us all so proud. In the movie, getting groovy with the atomic crowd. Thomas Shelby, he may well be just a gypsy boy. You and him and Oscar, just look at you now, tearing up the boulevard off Tinseltown.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, good man, Cillian. Great year for Cillian. And now he's got a song.
Yeah.
Thanks to you.
He's made it now.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
OK, tell us the story behind it.
It's just one of those... Well, it goes back, I suppose, the one that shakes the barley way back. I was at the after show for that, so I kind of have a little connection. I'm not friends with Cillian anyway, just met him.
But you've met him.
But I've met him, and I suppose, you know, when you're of that ilk or whatever that time, he was just watching his career, you know, growing up, and it was, you know, he's just... the stars risen and risen and risen, and the whole and I was always kind of amazed by him just in how engrossed he got in his parts and stuff. He seemed to be really, really professional and very quiet and very humble kind of guy. And so I just heard the news coming through, you know, I knew there was talk about him getting it, and then he got it, and I just woke up in the morning and said, oh, you got that, brilliant, this, and I went, good man, Cillian, that's good. And I went, oh, you know what? That could be a song.
The simplicity of it. Good.
Yeah, it was just, you know, how you'd say it, because we'd all say that, good man, Cillian, well done, and especially in Cork and places like that, to say, you know, good man.
Did you just try and do a Cork accent by doing Cork?
Well...
I leave you away with
no,
it this
I would have
time.
said bio. I wouldn't, so, yeah, and it was just that. I just sort of, carved the song around that saying. I suppose it would be an Irish, way of saying, a nod to somebody. And it's, it's nice to explain that to people when you're away, what it's about, a good man Killian, actually, it's a really nice thing to say. It's, not everybody gets that sort of...
But you've probably given him notions now, because now he's got an Oscar and a song.
Well, I'd say he's more thrilled with the Oscar, Martin.
Well, let's wait and see. We'll find out in due course.
Yeah, it's just, listen, it's a nice thing for him, and it's a nice accolade for the country, and it's so.
Is he aware that you've written a song about him? Do you know?
I've no idea.
Yeah,
no idea.
Have you not DM'd him on Insta?
No,
he's not on
I
social
haven't
media
at all.
for
I
us.
wouldn't dare do that. He's a very personal, or a very, I think, private kind of person. And listen, if the song comes his way and he likes it, that's good. And if it doesn't, that's fine. I've kind of I've managed to, carve a song into the thing, and it's just nice for me. I love that process, and then I hooked up with a band in Cork. I was down doing a bit of radio, and they were in the studio. It was around St. Paddy's Day and all that at the time, and I was kind of putting it together. And then I thought there were these young, kind of vibrant young fellow Fogues. And I said, you fancy going doing the song? And he said, yeah. So we got together then. We met in Slane and we done the video and all that kind of thing.
Okay.
Courtney Cullen's also playing fiddle. So it kind of gathered together sort of people that I knew would hopefully make it sound sort of Celtic-y and, home as well. And so it worked out pretty well. And it came together very close, very quickly, very easy. It was a painless day with Mark and the guys, Mark Cahill up in Slane Studios, and they have a lovely thing going on there called the Ivory Sessions, and we done it live. And so it was just,
good.
Yeah, it was painless. It was great. Yeah.
All done. What's this about you and Germany? They absolutely love you over there.
Well, I've got just a little relationship. I started just gigging out there a good bit, and then as you meet these people, I met a producer, and he kind of really liked what I was doing, and he asked me to come over, and we done some recording and writing together and whatnot. And he's also a producer for the music for Let's Dance, strictly in Germany.
Right.
Oh, wow.
So then he said, when you're here, why don't you sing a few of these? Because he knows I likes to sing covers as well and do my own twist and stuff. So he said, well, let's try and do. So that was a few years back, and I've been sort of on every term since that, or every show, every series since that, just doing vocals for it, strictly in Germany. And
so you're like the Irish version of David Hasselhoff in Germany.
Thanks, Elaine.
But he's huge in Germany. He sang when the Berlin Wall came down, let's remember.
It's not even, but it's nice. It's a nice thing. It's I get to do some gigs over there. I go over next week now and do some hook up with the guys. Well, I'm going over to do my own thing next week. It's nothing to do with Let's Dance, but it's nice. It's nice people, they kind of like that, the connection, yeah.
I'm just thinking of what we say on Strictly on the BBC, where they have their in-house band and they have their singers. So you would get to sing a great variance of songs.
Yeah, well, it's we do it tracks. So sometimes I do it at home and send them the stuff, and they do it all because I have a little setup at home. Sometimes I do it in Germany, and but it's great. I mean, you just do an Enter Sandman to a polka or something, it's really good. And I love particularly because I get a lot of the big band stuff, and I love trying to put on my Sinatra kind of thing,
Do you do that sort of stuff?
I do that. I quite love all that kind of thing. So whenever the song comes along like that, I really like, it appeals to me a lot for some reason. I don't know why. So it must be the old crooner in me somewhere. My dad, I blame him for that, yeah.
But the production behind that is massive. Like, Germany's a very big country and a massive population. I'd be a completely different kind of vibe than you would in the production sets here in Ireland, really, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's a big production. I mean, Eurovision was a big production, and so, on a scale that's probably in those terms,
Really?
It's a big production in the studio in Cologne, and it's pretty big, but it's just, at the end of the day, it's the same process, but it's just probably bigger budgets and all those kind of things,
Speak any German now?
Little bits, but don't put me to the test.
That's all I know, by the way.
I can count to 10 and do things like that, and I can ask for things, just a little, a coffee and things like that. But no, I wouldn't dare say I can speak German.
No.
But but you get lazy because everybody speaks English, and
I know we're kind of spoiled, aren't we?
Yeah, we're a bit spoiled, and except maybe the older generation, not so much. But I mean, all of the younger people, and anybody in TV and anybody in music, they all speak better English than me. To be honest.
Do they understand your accent? Because when I'm abroad, sometimes people don't get my Cork accent sometimes.
What?
Aren't you hilarious, aren't you?
Yeah, that can be a problem. Although I've learned to slow. I used to speak very fast. I've learned to kind of slow myself down a wee bit, so that kind of helps. And yeah, and their dairy girls have helped a bit, you know. So
It's been a little bit of a help.
Yeah, but no, yeah, you do get the have to sometimes, yes, slow up, and you realise that, you know, you're not speaking to, you know, the next door neighbour, you know what I mean? So yeah, you have to sort of think about it a little bit. Yeah.
When September comes around, though, you can speak whatever way you want, because you'll be back home and doing the Donegal Camino.
Yes. Yeah, we do. Well, listen, I'm just part of it. I join them for a day normally. It's this great initiative that a few people have put together, and it runs from the 1st to the 7th of September this year, and it's always fantastic. There's lovely walks around the coast of Ireland or the coast of Donegal, and they start up in Malin Head, way up the top northwest of Ireland, and we end up down at the Slieve League, the cliffs that are reportedly taller than the cliffs of Moher and stuff. They're spectacular. So you can join for a week, or you can join for a day, or whatever it is. So people come and join us. It's just fantastic. Yeah.
And our second favourite Donegal person, Noel Cunningham. I'm only saying that now because you heard from
I know.
Noel Cunningham
listen,
is
my
involved in
favourite
that as
Donegal
well.
person is Noel Cunningham too, so that's fine.
In fairness, he is he's a fairly wonderful man, but he's going to be look, there he is, front and centre once again.
Yeah, that's a few of I think that was on Hornhead. We took that. It was just spectacular, and we always honestly get amazing weather for the last few years in September. So, if you want to experience Donegal and good weather, come in September, the 1st to the 7th. The Camino.ie. It's all the stuff.
It's raised money for
yeah, and it's just amazing, you know. And I've learned so much about the county, honestly, doing it. You know, I thought I knew a lot, but
isn't it funny how we take our own counties for granted?
Yeah.
And then if you become a tourist in your own county for a couple of days,
yeah, well, they have guides on it, and they tell you things that you didn't know. I mean, like my mum's from Downings, which is another drive we done around the Atlantic Drive, and I passed my home, you know, my ancestral home. So I thought I knew an awful lot about it, the area. And my mum's still around; she speaks a lot about it. But they had guides with us, and the amount of stuff that I learned just about that area in particular, you know, just telling you things. It's great. Yeah.
Will Jimmy's winning matches be added to your set list?
I didn't want to bring it up because Martin's not the best last week.
Still a bit delicate.
Yeah, listen, it's great. And Rory Gallagher, who wrote the Jimmy winning matches, is a really good pal. We've worked on records together and whatnot, and we're collaborating on something at the minute. So, yeah, it's great. Just, you know, it's great to be back. And it's a nice thing because I think the players went and got Jimmy and sort of embraced and sort of got him back into the camp, and they seem to be playing really well for them. There's a nice young bunch of players there, and a bit of experience as well. So there's a nice vibe going on there.
Good vibe, and they still haven't peaked.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think they're just starting to come into their own. Yeah,
they're a bit more hopeful now. Dublin got knocked out.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, it's good for every team, to be honest, when Dublin's not there to have to play, to be, you know what I mean?
It's not good for us, but we'll be back.
Galway,
bigger and better.
Yeah, it was good for Galway, obviously. They've done very well.
It's been lovely chatting to you once again. Great to see you. Seriously, that man hasn't aged a day.
I just say that I'm out in Duleek tonight.
Oh, well, I have that.
Oh, you haven't, have you?
Sorry. I am all over that.
Yes. But that's what you're so you're getting it in stereo.
Yeah. Mickey Joe is performing at the Fireside Festival in Duleek, County Meath today. And, of course, you can listen to Goodman Killian on all the usual streaming services.
Good to see you, sir.
Thank you very much.
After the break, we're having a ball in the kitchen. In fact, we're having several of them.
What?
We're making meatballs.
Oh, phew.
Will you behave yourself, please? Kids watching. We'll see you in just a minute.
You're very welcome back. Mickey Joe fancied getting fed while he was here, so he stuck around when he heard there were meatballs on the menu.
Yeah, he's a hungry boy. We have to feed him.
We do. We came all the way from Donegal.
It's a long way from Donegal.
Yeah. Martin O'Donnell is here, and he's come all the way from Blackrock College in Golliff and is in charge of the kitchen today.
God love him.
Meatballs. Will you relax, lads?
The wrong two guys to be with, the Dublin man and the Donegal man.
Yeah, we got a Kerry chef coming in tomorrow. Go on.
So we're going to get started. So we're doing a lovely kind of pork and turkey meatball. So in here I have half pork and half turkey mince. I have some small chopped apple and onion.
Yeah.
So we're just going to mix them in. We have some breadcrumbs.
Delicious.
2 tablespoons. A little bit of garlic puree. So obviously we make this one, but you can get them in supermarkets.
Yeah, you get it in a tube. Yeah.
So handy, yeah. I have parsley, sage as well. And basically, you mix it all up. You just get in, you mix it. And what I've done is I've started our meatballs.
All right.
Okay.
So, kind of on a hot pan, the meatballs have got that lovely colour on them. And I'm going to add in our chorizo, and this is going to create the sauce. So I'm just going to push that to one side. So I have our balls frying here. Just started them a couple of minutes ago. Once they get that lovely colour, you turn them over. We're going to bring that back up to hot heat. Going to add in our chorizo, and that's going to create the sauce and then the tomato.
Okay.
So you can hear the pan is really kicked in there. Going to add in our chorizo. So chorizo works well. You have the pork, chorizo, and turkey. And we're going to let that do its thing. So I'm going to turn it back down to 6. We're going to make a lovely homemade gnocchi. So gnocchi is such an easy dish. We're not going to boil it because we don't really have the time.
Yeah. I didn't realise you'd made this yourself, Martin. Now I'm really impressed.
We make it all the time in the restaurant. It's so easy to do. So when we're doing it in the restaurant, we take potatoes and bake them in the oven. So like straight in the oven, dry trays, and bake them in the skin. We cut them in half and we scoop them out. And we push it through a sieve so you have really fine potatoes. If you don't have a potato ricer or anything fancy like that, push it through a sieve without the skins. And you're left with dry potatoes that's really light and fluffy. And this gives it the lovely light texture. I have 150 grams of plain flour. I have some fresh herbs, so I have chive and parsley in this one. I have 1 small egg and 2 yolks. So again, this is going to be our binding agent. And then it goes. And again, you give it a good mix.
In with the hand to sort it out.
In with the hands, yeah. Great one for the kids as well. Get them involved, you know. And then, again, coming back to that garlic, Martin, if you want to give me a teaspoon of that garlic puree in here.
Sure, no problem.
Sous chef.
Sous chef, Martin,
Yeah, well, might as well
like watching an episode of The Bear, isn't it?
Garlic puree is I love the cheese.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfect. So that's, again, the garlic puree coming into our gnocchi. You don't have to use it. You could use a little bit of Parmesan. And again, you work that until it's all combined. So it's quite easy to do. And again, those gnocchi, coming back to it, we did them yesterday in the restaurant.
Okay.
So we boiled them in a boiling water. They float to the top after a minute or 2.
Yes.
Is that the sign that they're done?
Yes. So you'd have your pot, at this stage, you'd have your pot of boiling water and it's boiling, right? So you take out your gnocchis just like that, you roll them, you cut them, and into your boiling water, and they'll float.
Okay.
Straight away.
Well, it might take a minute or 2.
Oh, no, what I mean is as soon as you have it rolled and cut, straight into the water.
Oh, look at them now.
They look great.
They look great, don't they? Yeah.
So these are cold. They were made yesterday evening. What we did is once we got them out of the boiling water, we put them in a little bit of oil and into the fridge.
Okay.
They'll stay in the fridge for 2 to 3 days. If you didn't want to cook all of them, if you wanted to keep some for tomorrow.
Do it in batches, lovely.
Yeah, exactly. So such a lovely, easy dish. So you can see they're getting that lovely colour as well. Our chorizo, beautiful.
Would they be like one of the easiest pastas to make yourself?
In my opinion, yeah.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and again, you can do it all in advance. It's so easy. You know, if it is a little bit sticky, you can see the texture of that one now. Once you'd roll it, it's not sticking to your hands.
Yeah,
so that's exactly what you want.
Okay.
That kind of depth or width, and then just cut them and away they go,
Okay, so you can impress people being like, I made my own pasta and it's gnocchi.
100%, and you could do it beforehand. So, like this, you could just turn on the frying pan and away it goes.
You getting ideas
so
for
we have
dinner
our
time?
meatballs.
Yeah, no, I'll have somebody's making dinner, which is great. Even better. That's the best idea. Yeah, anybody that's...
Get your act together.
Anytime you don't have to cook is a great day.
It is, isn't it? I know.
Anytime that somebody feeds you is brilliant. Yeah. I'm a musician, so I eat wherever I get food. Yeah,
Well,
you never know the next
you're
time.
on cleanup.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. I
Gonna make you work for
I
it.
can handle that. Yeah. I'm well trained at this stage.
So you've added some tomatoes to this now.
So, again, yeah, that is... we have our own homemade tomato sauce, but chopped tomatoes, and if there is, like, chopped herbs and garlic in it, all the better. It's going to give it even more flavour.
And if not, could you just add a few things
100%.
yourself?
You could add some onions. You could add a little bit of chopped garlic. You could add the garlic puree. You could, you know, even ginger puree.
It does, yeah.
So what I'm going to do is just bring that back up to the boil. We have our gnocchi, and we have some lovely pecorino cheese. Just back from holidays in Italy, so we have the inspiration of pecorino. Over in Tuscany for 10 days with the family.
Oh, stunning.
Eating pecorino out our ears, so great to actually bring back a little bit and actually get to enjoy some.
For you.
Yeah, probably my favourite food cheese, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a food group in its own in
My
itself.
mum said that when I went to school, that she didn't ever had to ask me what I wanted for lunch. It was always cheese sandwiches, and I haven't changed. Still love a cheese sandwich.
Oh, should have made you cheese sandwiches then, shouldn't we?
Cheese sandwich, that's great. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, any types of cheese.
Easily
great,
pleased.
Yeah. Fascinated with cheese.
Easily cheesed.
Yeah, easily cheesed.
And you've joined the Grandad Club. Well, you joined it. You're signed up a few years now.
Yeah, I'm signed up a few years. I have a 5 and a 3-year-old. Yeah, 2 little girls, Aria and Olivia.
Oh, congratulations!
My daughter and my son. I was a young dad, so that's the products of being a young dad. You get early grandchildren and stuff. You're, you know,
okay,
that's good. That's lovely.
It's
a
great.
great
isn't it?
time because
Brilliant.
I'm young to enjoy them and all
Yeah,
those
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of things.
yeah.
Yeah, they're good fun. They're good fun. Yeah.
And
It's
just-
great. You can they come in and they go. So,
Yeah, I know.
leave
That's
a
the other
mess,
thing.
but it's okay. You don't
Yeah.
mind cleaning up the mess.
And you can ruin them and send them back.
Yes.
And can I ask, do they love We've Got the World Tonight?
Oh yeah. Well, one of them in particular has gone through that phase now, and I think she always wants me to sing different stuff now. But yeah,
okay.
they did go through that phase of standing at the TV and sort of going, Yeah. And then, yeah.
We've got that in common, so me and your grandchildren.
That's great.
All right, so where are we now?
I am actually just going to plate up a little plate of pillowy gnocchi for Shiva.
Yes, thank you very much.
Our vegetarian.
The resident veggie.
And a little bit of pecorino.
Delicious.
So again, gives it that lovely.
Thank you, Martin. He's always thinking of me, isn't he?
Sick. And the gas thing is, right, the pecorino is fine, but it was Parmesan. It's not.
Couldn't have it.
Yeah.
Parmesan's not vegetarian,
We
yeah.
were chatting about that on-
yeah, we
on
were,
air, yeah.
we were.
So now our meat.
I'd eat that myself.
Yeah, it's great. The vegetarian
Gorgeous.
stuff's great, isn't it?
Okay,
We're
and
just
now
going to
let's-
plate up the meatballs for me. A little bit of sauce, some of the chorizo, some of the fresh herbs, and we'll put the gnocchi. I like to do it upside down, so a little bit of the gnocchi on top.
Ooh. Only pasta goes on the bottom. What's this?
Yeah, it's controversial.
Deconstructed.
It's all about the presentation.
He's just back from Italy.
Yeah.
He's come back with the notion.
Yes, he has.
Norway are in a semi-final.
They're about to beat Donegal. Come on,
Right, guys.
come on, Mark.
Right,
keep
take
going.
it.
Yeah,
Have a
okay.
taste of that there, Mick Joe.
that
Thank
in,
you,
Cynthia.
thank you.
Okay.
Oh, don't forget your
This
pecorino.
looks-
Do you want
I'm
your
gonna have a
pecorino?
little-
Cheekers, yeah, that's okay. I want
If you want to do this and you saw how easy the
Right.
gnocchi was to make, full recipe details are up on our website, or of course you can call into Martin in the Blackrock Cottage in Galway to sample everything for yourself.
And you're going to want to sample everything yourself. That is absolutely delicious. Despite the unknown risk now, sunbed use continues nationwide. After this quick break, we ask why and discuss the rise of an illegal tanning nasal spray. We'll see you soon. We're going to dig into this. It's so good, Martin. Fáilte Rashko, Ireland AM. Now, we all love a bit of bronzing, but do we know when to stop? Well, not according to a recent study by the Dublin Skin and Cancer Hospital charity, which found that over 40% of Irish people have used sunbeds despite knowing the risks.
Here to discuss how to stay safe when catching sun colour is Professor Katrina Ryan from the Institute of Dermatology. Katrina, thank you so much for talking to us today. And it's pretty startling when you see these statistics. 40% of people still using sunbeds, not realising the danger, or do they realise and just don't care?
I think the simple answer is they realise it and don't care. You know, we've known for years now how dangerous sunbeds are, way more dangerous than natural sun, and really, really increase our risk of skin cancers, but particularly melanoma, which can be fatal once it's spread. I was actually surprised that it was 40% of people now in that study. It was a fantastic study that was done by a group of dermatology colleagues in Cork. It was looking at who had ever done a sunbed, and that was 40%. So maybe that's not all that surprising. Like, it was huge when I was growing up, like, you know, 20 years ago. You know,
But
lots
can
of
one
people-
bad burn cause melanoma later in life?
Yeah, you know, any blistering sunburn in your childhood significantly increases your risk of melanoma. I'll tell you that even one sunbed session, though, before the age of 35, which is often when we do it, studies have shown that up to a 75% increase risk of melanoma.
Say that once again. One sunbed session before the age of 35 can increase your risk by 75% of getting skin cancer.
Of getting melanoma.
Melanoma, the
and then
most
having
serious
done
type.
10 sessions in your whole lifetime doubles your risk of melanoma. So it's far higher, I think, than people realise. I think most people know that it increases your skin cancer risk, but it's definitely something I'm seeing creeping back again in my clinics. Yeah, in the younger generations. I think one of the best things that ever happened to us when it came to skin cancer risk, melanoma risk in Ireland is the advent of fake tan. It really changed the dynamic. You know, everybody when I was younger we used to do sunbeds. Like, it was just a really common thing. And then, good fake tans came along and really changed that dynamic. But it's recently, I'm hearing my patients and particularly my male patients, which is something that surprised me when I think about it, maybe doesn't as much, starting to use sunbeds again. And it's really, really concerning. And this study just highlights again to us that even though our knowledge is there,
Yes.
people are still doing these things.
Can we talk about why we want to tan? It's an aesthetic thing, and we know that it's bad for us, but it's like this cognitive dissonance that we have, that we know it's bad for us, but yet we still find it appealing and attractive.
Yeah, the psychology is really, really interesting. And no matter what we say about embracing our whiteness here, we don't want to. And the studies have shown that we feel more attractive with a tan, and also that people see us as being more attractive with a tan. So there's been good studies that have shown we look more attractive, we look slimmer, and we look healthier. Studies have shown that people will help somebody who has a tan more quickly. It goes beyond attractiveness, and you know, I'm not a psychologist, but also that somebody with a medium tan is more likely to get a job. So
that's someone very, very white.
Yes.
But look, hang on, you've tan on. I asked you this morning.
Yes.
It looks natural. I've tan on.
We've all got tan on.
Have you tan on?
The cameramen have tan on.
Do we all feel better?
Yeah,
we do.
There's no question. I know I look more attractive with the tan. The odd time I come in without my fake tan on, my practice manager Liz tells me I look tired. I know, I just haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't put on my tan. So yes, absolutely. But the tan doesn't need to come from a sunbed, and it doesn't need to come from the natural sun either. Fake tan is the safest type of tan. There's no risk involved, minimal risks involved with fake tan, and I think that's where we need to go. I will admit I was a sun worshipper in my previous life before being, up to the age of about 25, and I did things like I've done sunbeds in my past, back when I was young, in my late teens. My parents are probably horrified to hear that now. In my local beauty salon, and I knew that it increased my risk of skin cancer. This is ahead of being in medical school and whatnot, and I just didn't care.
Do you think it's more problematic in the younger generations? So because, when you're young, you think you're invincible. You don't put on sunscreen, you do sunbeds and stuff like that, because you're young, mortality doesn't even enter your head, and it's all about the aesthetic.
Yeah, we're more reckless when we're young, and that's been shown over and over again, our risk-taking, traits as well. And yeah, it's all about short-term gain rather than looking at the long term. Like I wouldn't get, on a sunbed if you gave me £1 million now. Like, when I see the horrors that happen in my clinic. Okay. But it is something that we need to change the mindset, especially of our younger generations. And I think, especially with social media, and that this goes for men and women. I think I see so many of my young, teenage men and men in their 20s who are going to the gym 6-7 times a week, taking supplements, and they have a funny looking tan. And I ask them, "Are you doing tan?" And I go, "Oh yeah, just to keep it base." They aren't going to do the fake tan as easily, so we really have to target them. And I'm not quite sure how to do it because the information is there. I think we need public awareness campaigns.
Can I ask about melanoma and how to spot it? What are the signs? When should someone get worried and get checked?
So I think that the first things are a new mole or a changing mole. They're the first things to say to anyone. What we like, how we like to teach our patients is A, B, C, D, E. So a mole that's asymmetric. Okay. A mole that has curvy borders. Colour changes within the same mole. Diameter of more than 6 millimetres, although they can be smaller than that. And then E is evolving, so an evolving mole. Another thing I say to my patients, though, is when you're looking at yourself, it's your ugly duckling. Something that sticks out as being different to the rest of your moles is really helpful too. And actually, when you're putting on your fake tan, is a great opportunity to get used to all of your moles.
Yeah, have a look around.
Yeah.
And it can look really tiny on the outside, but masking something really big on the inside, can't it?
Well, yeah. Well, I suppose the issue is that, as a melanoma changes, there's a phase where you can completely take it off when it hasn't spread down into the lymphatics and into the bloodstream. But I think what you're saying is at a certain point, once it goes into the lymphatics and heads off, then it metastasizes and can become fatal.
If you are someone with a lot of moles or are prone to them, is there a benefit in maybe mole mapping? Because I know a few years ago a lot of people were talking about that, just maybe taking note of what your moles are like, maybe taking a picture of them even and just changing them, having a look at them over time if they are concerning.
So you're talking about doing your own sort of,
or should you go to a GP?
So I think going to someone, having somebody actually seeing all your moles, if you're somebody who has lots of sort of abnormal looking moles, getting your moles checked by your GP or your dermatologist once a year, checking, a full body check and looking with something called a dermatoscope. We look into them and they show us the pigment networks of a mole. But what you're describing is also a really good thing for someone to be able to do at home. If you have, if you take your body and you look at each leg and each arm separately, divide your body here into 4, front and back, and take photos of that so that somebody can look at your back, and try and do that once a month. Maybe tie it in for women with doing your breast check as well, just so you're able to spot changes in your moles. But having those photos taken, I think, is a really good, a really good thing to do, and to be able to compare.
I had 9 moles taken off when I was in my teenage years, so I'm paranoid about it. But it is a good thing to do.
It is. To be
it's
aware.
a great thing to be paranoid.
Yeah.
I'd much prefer that people act quicker and maybe be wrong than just watch something gradually changing and just think they're going to see somebody better with time.
Yeah, Katrina, thank you so much for coming in and chatting to us today. That was brilliant.
Quite the education. Once again, thank you. Now, if you'd like more information from Katrina, you can check out Katrina Ryan Dermatology even on Instagram.
And for more on skin cancer safety, visit the Irish Cancer Society at cancer.ie.
Now, still to come, how to spot a love rat. You won't want to miss it. See you for that in 3.
They're all Leos, aren't they?
The past ain't finished with you, Maxine. Ain't nowhere to hide. There's show business. You never work in this town again. Maxine, what are you hiding?
I've seen the devil. Made it to the belly of the beast. You must eliminate all distractions. The beast will spit you right back out.
Time to pay for your sins.
It's America's new scream queen.
Nicely done. Thank you.
Well, let's take a last look at your morning paper, starting with the Irish Times. They lead with Starmer vows to be force for good after landslide wins across Britain. In his opening address, Britain's new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has claimed that his government will serve the people whether you voted for him or not, following his victory against former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
Front page of the Irish Independent opens with Starmer win will ease Ireland's migrant crisis as the new Labour government is set to ditch the controversial Rwanda migrant deportation scheme, which is said to be one of the key links behind Ireland's recent increase of asylum seekers.
Over to the Irish Examiner, it goes with reset for Anglo-Irish relations. The paper writes that the Labour landslide has renewed hopes for bilateral links, with Taoiseach Simon Harris calling for a great reset of relations.
Moving on to the tabloids now, the Herald reads Dubliners sent sick messages to Holly Stalker, reporting that convicted stalker Mark Mulligan exchanged sick messages with a security guard who plotted to rape and kidnap Holly Willoughby.
The Irish Sun leads with Holly's Irish stalker. Gardaí are investigating after a convicted Irish stalker exchanged messages with a man who plotted to kidnap, assault and murder Telly star Holly Willoughby.
The Daily Star writes lotto winner dies in Turkey tragedy, writing that lottery winner Michael Mouse Kelly, who scooped a jackpot of more than £4 million almost 30 years ago, has tragically died on holiday.
And finally, the Irish Daily Mail reads RTE resisted €150,000 cap on exit packages. RTE's Director General, Kevin Backhurst, claims that the government's proposed exit package cap would only attract their lower paid staff to voluntarily make themselves redundant, leaving the broadcaster with, quote, a load of management without people to manage.
Now, we have astrologist Caggie Dunlop up after the break. So we were talking about star signs and we've had lots of people texting in, right? Frank goes, I've heard astrologists won't date people of certain star signs. How is it my fault when I'm born? How would you feel if your star sign was an instant rejection? Well, Frank, I think you sound like a Gemini. Any chance? Have I got it right?
You mightn't be far wrong there.
I'm only joking.
Marie wants to know, when did astrology become a thing? It's all a bit cookie to me.
Yeah, it's always been a thing.
Yeah.
Was Copernicus an astrologer? Back in
millions
of years ago. Yeah. I could be wrong. I'm frequently wrong. Apparently, Leo and Scorpio are the worst pairing, but my partner and I are 20 years strong. Leo and Scorpio, that would be very clashy.
Yeah, but look, there's exceptions to every rule.
Well,
you know?
it's working for Kate.
Yeah,
Did you hear that, Kate?
Yes. Sharon said, I did a quick Google and found out that Leos like me are not suited for anyone that is not up to the task of showering them with attention, compliments and words of affirmation. Guess my husband has a lot of catching up to do. Put him to work, Sharon.
What's the best match for your star sign, do you know?
I don't know.
Have you ever looked into it? No?
I don't think so. I'm surrounded by Virgos. My husband, he's a Virgo. My mother's a Virgo. My sister, my best friend, surrounded by Virgos.
So you just went with type.
I did, yeah.
What's Jenny's star sign, do you know?
Jenny is a Taurus.
So a Taurus and a Capricorn.
Yeah, I don't know if it's supposed to work, but it does.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah.
Clearly does. Yeah.
So keep the texts coming in. The number is always is.
0896 111 111.
I always forget it.
I'd love to know, would you not date someone because of their star sign?
I know somebody.
Would it be a deal breaker?
I know someone who actually wouldn't even go on one date. She married somebody, but she did. Although she did warn me years ago to not go near a Gemini, and she was right. She was right.
So
there you go.
That's how I'm getting experience with that.
Yeah. So, right, we have lots of texts coming in. We'll go to those later. But for now, I'd like to ask you a question. Do you take an online break? Do you ever just throw your social media in the bin for a week, put the phone away?
For a week?
Just maybe I do for a week, or even for an hour, and just go completely offline.
No.
Would you ever do it?
Yeah.
How long could you put it away
I
for?
put the phone away. I don't want to be a slave to the Bing.
Yeah.
You know, so I put the thing away.
So apparently there's a new phenomenon called, if you want to put yourself offline, but there's a suggestion in The Guardian as to what things you can do if you want a complete digital detox offline break. And there's lots of healthy suggestions. There's lots of very cheap suggestions because they're free. So
we like cheap.
Now,
I
I need to ask you what you think. This is the top of the list. Sensory forest bathing. Can you tell me what that is?
It's a walk through the forest.
Exactly. So you'd be like me, forest bathing. So I suppose it's because it's more urban areas now. A lot of people live
talking
in.
about bathing. We're still keeping our clothes on, yeah?
Allegedly.
Yeah, we're just going for it. We're not going for a naked walk.
Whatever you want it to be, Martin.
Like I've done a lot of
No, we'll keep
retreats
the gear
and
on.
stuff like that, but it's called forest bathing. And I was sitting there, is that not just going for a walk in nature? So apparently a lot of people don't do that. You can do it's free. And apparently, years ago when I was on a retreat in Thailand, they were talking about sunlight bathing.
Sunbathing?
Is that just sunbathing?
No, no. I'm not talking about the bad sun, but getting your vitamin D in the morning when it's not too dangerous. But apparently you had to have your kit off for that one. I didn't partake. Yeah.
Right.
Creating a herb garden is another one.
No, everything I buy from the supermarkets dies anyway. So.
And making your own wildlife magnets. There you go. Now,
Wildlife magnets.
Stick a magnet on a leaf.
Or bird watching in your local park if you have one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. See a few magpies.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll be exotic bird watching now.
I'd be straight back on Instagram within 30 seconds after
I know,
all
you
that.
wouldn't last daytime.
No. Now, after the break, the tour straight out of Chelsea. Astrologist Caggie Dunlop will be joining us. We'll see you then. Welcome back. Now, she got her start on Made in Chelsea back in 2012, but these days the main drama in Caggie Dunlop's life is written in her star chart.
Today she's a podcaster and author, and we're delighted not just to welcome her to Ireland AM for the first time, but to welcome you to Ireland for the first time.
I know.
Caggie, what's taking you so long?
I don't know. Honestly, it's awful. We were just saying before we started, I cannot believe that I've never been to Ireland before.
Well, you're here now.
It must have been
now.
written in the stars, huh?
Exactly. Now's the time to be here.
And Caggie got the green memo.
I know, guys, you left me out. You left me out. I mustn't be in that WhatsApp group.
OK, we need to sort this out.
Yeah,
anyway, before you go home, you need to have a spice bag.
You do.
You need to have a spice bag. That's one of the things you need to do.
That is our
before she
top
heads
tip.
home.
Yes.
Guinness and a spice bag.
Yeah.
What's a spice?
Spice bag, it will change your life.
Yeah.
OK?
Yeah.
It will change your life.
OK,
Anyway,
I'll take your word for it. I'll go and do that this
they'll
afternoon.
get that for you wherever you want it.
Yeah.
Rolling Stones came over, they had a spice bag. They had more spice bags.
Yeah.
They loved it. So you'll probably love it too.
A Dublin delicacy.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about you, because you aren't an astrologist, but astrology does play a big part in your life. How?
Yes, it plays a very big part in my life. It's what I've sort of built a brand around, the podcast, the book. It's centred around your Saturn return, which is something that happens in your late 20s, so at around 29 and a half years. Saturn, the planet, returns to the same place in the sky it was when you were born. Oh. And with it, it brings this cosmic coming of age and initiation into adulthood. So it's a very sort of pivotal time in people's lives, and it very much was one for me. And so I then wanted to kind of share this information with people and built the brand off the back of that.
So how was your own Saturn return then? Was it dramatic?
It was quite dramatic. I mean, it tends to be when you have these big shifts in your life. So it can be career, relationship. A lot of people will move country. It can be very turbulent, but it does so that you can build things on solid foundation. So it's often a big start of something new for people when they turn 30.
When they turn 30, OK. So can I ask, does this happen like over a weekend?
No.
Or does it take a while?
It takes about 3 years.
What?
So yeah, it's quite a long period of transition.
Oh, so I could still maybe be going through that.
You could still be going through it.
Yeah.
And you just got married.
I know.
You see?
Yeah, there's my foundations.
So yeah, it can also mean if you've been in like the right relationship, the right career, a sort of levelling up, so marriage, children, promotion, stuff like that, or it can mean that things suddenly go in a very different direction.
OK.
And speaking of different directions, this is obviously a complete reinvention after you started out on a reality TV show.
Yeah.
This is a totally different career path.
And it's not a clear trajectory to go from reality TV to doing something like this. But I'm a big believer in that you end up doing what you're supposed to be doing. And this feels very aligned for me.
OK. The fact that Saturn, like, it's called Saturn Returns for a reason, because you say that this happened when you were about, what, 26, 27?
29. So, yeah, you can start sort of... The shift, I guess, I started feeling in my late 20s, around 27, where, you know, often the coping strategies or the way that you've been living your life so far no longer kind of meet the person that you're supposed to be becoming. And it's, yeah, like I said, it's a challenging period, but then it kind of brought me to astrology and spirituality.
Yeah. OK, but the point I'm leading up to is it's going to come around again. So do people need to stay away from you for 2 or 3 years?
Well, in terms of it coming around again, like, it happens like every 30 years, so you'll have another one as you approach 60. But people don't need to stay away from you, but you will feel more internally that things are a bit disruptive.
OK, so with a shift like that, do you have advice for anyone in their late 20s or approaching their own Saturn return?
My advice would be that your 20s are a mock exam for life. You can't fail them. So I think we put a huge amount of pressure on ourselves to have everything filed into some kind of meaning, that by 30 we need to know exactly who we are, what we're supposed to be doing. And we all know that in reality that's often not the case. So just to give yourself a little bit more kindness in still knowing that you have time to figure it out.
I love that.
That is, yeah, I love it too. I'm just thinking the other end, because I know people who probably are going through their second Saturn return.
Yes.
And it's like a reassessment, because
Totally.
I hear of people now in their mid-50s, mid to late 50s, who are kind of taking the things that are really negative in their life, almost cancerous in their lives, and saying, I can't deal with that anymore. I need positive aspects, and they're moving forward. So this makes sense.
There you go. It's very much a sort of recognising what's no longer working and making the necessary changes. And the second Saturn return is very much about legacy. What is the legacy that you want to leave behind? Like, how have the last 30 years shaped you, and are you content with the decisions that you've made?
And you're a Taurus, Kagi, am I right?
I am a Taurus.
Are you a classic Taurus?
I am, in the sense that I'm very homely. I like nice things. I would say that I'm loyal. But I like to look at the sort of big three, which is your sun, moon and rising.
Of course, yes.
But, the sort of characteristics, I'd say I am quite a classic Taurus.
Yeah, I live with a Taurian, so you've just explained her very, very well.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you, though, prior to this event happening in your life, were you just conforming?
Pardon?
Were you just conforming? Were you just going with what people expected you to be?
That's a very, very good question. And I would say yes. And I don't know, I think a lot of us do that. We may know who we are when we're younger, but then through school and societal expectations, we try and fit in. And I think your Saturn return is kind of this moment where you realise that actually you want to stand out for the things that make you you. So to answer your question, yes, I probably was.
Astrology seems like it's brought you a lot of clarity and a lot of zen. Like, you're bringing a lot of zen to the studio, isn't she? Like, you're just oozing it. How can people get started into astrology and this kind of thing?
Oh, well, obviously listen to the podcast if these themes are resonating, because we cover so many topics under this umbrella that are all about personal development of you finding your authentic truth. And then the book really taps into my personal journey and all the kind of challenges that I faced throughout my 20s and this sort of strange road that I went on that led me to something that feels very aligned with who I am. And also there are many apps. I mean, I use The Pattern, which is an incredible app that gives you that kind of insight into your birth chart and the transits that you'll be going through. But I think with social media now, there are so many incredible astrologers out there and ways that you can find a lot about yourself. And it's, I think, looking at your chart and also getting an astrology reading, I would highly recommend that.
Yeah. Okay, well, we got ours already, didn't we?
Yeah, we've got a brief overview.
We've got a brief, yeah, but what do you think? I'm Capricorn.
Yes. So the Capricorn, I love Capricorn, and especially for business, because they're very hardworking, very kind of based in reality. They're detail orientated, and they don't shy away from work, and they're very kind of stable. They're forward thinking. They plan for the future. So they're good people to kind of have in your network.
That is you down to the ground. That absolutely is. Yeah.
Very reliable.
I'm looking
responsible.
in a mirror.
Yes, clearly. Yeah. Let's just touch on.
Oh, you don't want to talk about you?
No, I know. I'm a classic Sagittarius. I am. But let's talk about the yoga picnic that you're doing this weekend.
Yes. So Yoga Picnic is a wellness festival that's happening tomorrow. I'm super excited to be part of it because it's so magical for me to be able to talk about Saturn returns and everything that I'm doing, especially with such like-minded people that will be there tomorrow. It was sold out on Thursday, but I have just heard that they've got some more tickets available if people are interested.
Amazing. Beautiful. Well, if you want to have a taste of Caggie's Zen, I really would recommend going. Caggie, thank you so much for coming and chatting to us today.
Thank you for having me.
And a reminder that tickets are still available to see Caggie talk at Yoga Picnic tomorrow, and details are up on yogapicnic.com.
Up next, how to care for your exotic birds.
What call me?
An exotic bird. Got to be troubled now. Our vet, Dr. Bobby, is up after this break. Welcome back. Exotic birds are some of the most fascinating creatures on the planet. Their vibrant colours, unique features and uncommon behaviours make them a popular pet.
But while plenty of people are going mad for these beautiful creatures, many are finding they might not be the easiest to look after.
Our favourite veterinarian, Dr. Bobby Ortiz, joins us now with a couple of birds.
Hi guys, how are you?
Tell us about them. Who have you brought?
So this is Cosmo, an African grey parrot. Now she's only about 6 months, so she's still a baby. And then we have Luna over here. Luna's about 3 or 4. We're not entirely sure exact age, but she's also a rescue. She's checking us out there and seeing what's going on.
Yeah, she's tilting the head all
right.
So.
I think I do have a little treat for her. We'll see if she'll. She'll take that. There we go.
She's a good girl.
She's
a good girl. So what types of creatures have we there, and what are their characteristics?
So African grey parrot here, probably one of the most commonly kept larger parrot, I'd say, due to how intelligent they are, how easy they are to train, and how they bond with humans, and they actually live quite a long time, anywhere from 40 to 60 years.
40 to 60 years. So they say a dog is not for Christmas, it's for life. An African grey is literally for life, and you might have to give it to someone on your will.
Yes, it's actually quite commonly done that they have to be given down because people get them in their 30s or 40s and they think they're going to have them, and then they have to pass them to children or friends or anything like that. And then Luna over here, she's enjoying that walnut, is a blue and gold macaw.
Okay. And they have a longer lifespan.
Yeah, about the same. Yeah, definitely about the same.
She's making short work of that walnut.
Yeah, she's getting straight through to it.
Great girl, good at crushing nuts, good girl. She's fabulous, though, isn't she?
Yeah.
And I suppose when we think of a parrot, this is the traditional, colourful-looking parrot that we think of, that we see in magazines, on TV, etc. But they make great pets, but they're not the easiest to look after.
No, I think they do make amazing pets, and especially for people who have the time to really dedicate to these animals, because they need a lot of time. But I think a lot of people get them, they bring them into their home and think that they're just going to be easily to coexist and have these small cages and don't realise They need large aviaries. They need really specialized nutrition to make sure that they're eating correctly, because some of the most common diseases I see with these guys is actually nutritional diseases. So, well, nuts and things like this are great. And actually, it's really good that we're giving, rather than just giving the walnut itself, we're giving the whole. So she gets to destroy it and gets the behavior of ripping it apart.
And probably trims the beak a little bit as well.
Exactly, helps with the beak and everything, and then their natural kind of behavior in the wild. But seeds actually should not really be their main diet.
Oh, really?
And most of the time, if you go to most pet stores and things like that, you'll see parrot mixes, and it's all these seeds and fruits and things like that. And it's really, really, really bad for them. It's one of the biggest leading causes, I'd say, in health issues with parrots.
Okay, Luna, like you said, is a rescue. She was in a bad way when you found her.
Yeah. So she's actually was taken in by Parrot Rescue Ireland, and they found her. She's gorgeous colours now, but when she was found, missing feathers all over they get this self-destructive behaviour where they actually rip feathers off themselves because they're kept in inappropriate conditions or things like that.
Look at her there. That's tragic. She had a broken leg.
Yep. So then she came into us, and we actually were able to fix her broken leg. And you can actually see she's actually using the broken leg now, which is amazing. So we actually had to do an external fixator. So we put pins in, stabilized the leg, and then after 6 weeks, we removed the pins. And then she made a really, really nice recovery. And you can see there, we're actually using the specialized equipment to place the pins in the surgery, pretty much just like a human or a dog or anything like that. There's no difference.
They're winged creatures, obviously. They need space to fly. You can't keep a creature like this in a tiny little cage. It's just utter. It's tragic and cruel.
Yeah. Even some of the other birds that we would see, like we think, really small budgie, budgerigar or lovebirds that are, a quarter of these size. They still need huge amount of area to be able to fly around, to move, and people get these little tiny cages and think it's adequate. Exactly, they're winged creatures. And it's really important. Actually, you kind of see that I have a little thing in my hand here holding Cosmo here. And the reason is that she has her full flight feathers. She's being trained to actually be flight trained so they can actually fly around. And you might even see people online or wherever letting the birds fly around parks and things like that are trained to come back.
But you have to train them to come back. It's not their natural instinct to.
Yeah, but they can really, really do quite well in that. And that's why you kind of think of when birds get their wings trimmed, should we really be doing that? That's so really cruel. Ethically questionable. These birds would fly sometimes hundreds of miles a day, flying around and different areas. And then we bring them in our home, we're feeding them inappropriate diets, we're clipping their wings, and no wonder they're developing nutritional diseases like obesity because they're not getting the exercise.
But they're very intelligent creatures as well. Some of them have the cognitive ability of a 5-year-old child.
Yep,
so that's cruelty to do that to them.
Yeah.
Psychological cruelty.
Exactly. There's a huge debate of should we even keep them? I think they for amazing owners that are really dedicated to these birds, I think they can make amazing truly lifelong pets as long as we have the information going in.
Okay, but they need social interaction. So look, if you've got a budgie, it might be an idea to get another budgie so that they've had that social, they can have that social interaction.
Absolutely. And again, like a lot of people will even say that it's difficult to birds like this that are so bonded with us, with their owners, that we go away for vacation for a couple of days, you come back and they're ill, they're not well because they're so bonded to us, So it is good to either have a... There we go.
Gee, macaroni.
I think she wants to be bonded to you.
You nearly gave me a heart attack.
Would you like to step over? Go on.
She sit on me?
Yeah.
Hello.
There you go. I think she might go up to you.
We had a budgie in our house, but we used to on occasion. We used to just pass her about, sit on your shoulder.
There you go, just like Cosmo there.
Hello. This is so cute. Look, I think I'm in love. Does she normally do that?
She does. Only the people she likes.
Okay, I feel quite special now.
He was very quick pointing that out.
Yeah, but it is lovely. I mean, there is an ideal environment for exotic birds as well. Ireland probably doesn't have the climate traditionally we think of it, but there is a proper way of taking care of them, and you need to do your research before you decide to introduce one into your home.
Absolutely.
So tell us about that.
So want to bring them in.
You're just looking terrified. She's going to peck my head, aren't you?
No, not at all. Definitely doing the research, making sure that you have enough space in your home to bring them in, making sure that you're ready for a very long commitment, making sure that you also know that the type of nutrition they need, that they need formulated pellets mixed in with fresh fruits and fresh nuts and vegetables and things like that. And also, again, you talk about the environment in Ireland. these guys would come from Australia, French Polynesia, South America, where there's lots of sun. So UVB is really important to them. So getting them outside, just like we talk about ourselves, getting the sun normal for us is really important for their...
OK. You mentioned the food that they shouldn't have, and that's generally the food that's sold in so many places.
Exactly,
there's also toys that they shouldn't have.
Yeah, that's a really important because these guys are generally, as you can see, very destructive. So if people will actually make real strives to parrots proof their home, right? To try to make it safe that their birds can actually fly around their home and not destroy everything, but they still will. So making sure that they don't have access to metal objects, right? We think of, which really counterintuitive, we think of cages or metal. Metal is actually highly toxic to these guys if they ingest that. And just this week, we had to remove one at work, had to remove metal from the inside of a different macaw.
But even stuff that we have in our atmosphere, like sprays and oils and things like that, that might be infused around the room.
Perfumes, exactly. And then it was actually really commonly used Teflon. So actually, Teflon cooking can actually release chemicals that are highly toxic to birds. So that's something that can actually cause injury to them as well, that we, again, don't really realise. And people bring sick birds in and go, I don't know what's going on. I keep them in my kitchen. And
well,
so have to be
that's
careful.
the white.
Yeah.
It's your frying pan, so be very, very careful.
I feel like Dr. Dolittle.
I was about to say, so we got 2 all boards sitting here.
I was waiting for that. Thank you very much.
That's it, I'm in serious trouble now.
I'm quite OK about it, but Cosmo, I think, might be so. Dr. Bobby, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Look at me, I'm so delighted.
She's happy now.
I
She's
know.
delighted.
It doesn't take much.
For more tips and tricks for looking after your family pet, head over to Dr. Bob on Instagram.
Oh, look. Oh, she's so cute. Anyway, from exotic birds to rats, well, love rats. We'll reveal how to spot them. That's next. Aren't we going to? That's great, Cosmo. Very welcome back to Ireland AM. Now, those following the latest season of Love Island will know all too well the antics of head wrecker Io, who has been yo-yoing between fellow Islanders Mimi, Uma and Jess all season.
Beautiful. Io's antics have got us thinking about the big players and love rats we've crossed in our own lives. So naturally, we've assembled a panel.
Of course we have. Now joining us now with their red flag stories are podcasters Carla Kay, Sam Kelly and agony aunt Tina Kumarianos. Thank you all for joining us on the show this morning. Now, Tina, you would think in this day and age, we're watching it in Love Island, it's all about dating apps and people swiping left and right and maybe having a different person every night of the week to date because of this. But it's not the advent of dating apps that has caused this. This behaviour has been around for time immemorial.
What are you saying, Elaine?
Yeah,
are you accusing me?
I'm not saying anything, but you've had you've had a colourful love life.
A happy girl, yes. I've had a very, very colourful life. I'm really all in favour of being a love rat because I was one myself for many years. I never went solo. I always had 2 lovers. And so with the result, when something happened to one, it was no big deal because the other one was there.
But the things, did they know about each other? That's the thing.
Oh, of course not. That would have been rude, Elaine. It would have been very rude. No, none of them knew about each other. And it made them very happy that they... Well, I'm sure it made them very happy that they didn't know each other.
Yes.
But I was only ever in love once. And... it was wonderful. It was for 10 years. Unfortunately, he was married. But when it got really, really serious and he was going to leave I thought, no, this is not what I want going forward. It would have been too upsetting to too many people. And nobody else knew about this. Right. So I married the person who'd been asking me for 7 years instead. I said, look, I don't love you, but... if you want to do this, and you seem to really want to do this, we'll give it a whirl, but I won't marry you in Ireland. There's no divorce. I won't marry you in a church. So we got married in Chelsea Registry Office.
Yeah, but if you did, I mean, looking at that, if that was a man sitting on the couch now saying that, they'd be absolutely vilified, and we're actually giggling away about it here. But
I know, but you see, women don't admit it. I know there's a lot of women out there like me, but they don't like to say, no, I wouldn't. I couldn't.
The player
possibly.
got played at the end of the day because
yes, the player got played. I did get played because. Yes, I got a fax into my office when I worked in Image magazine from some poor man out in the Philippines saying my husband was having an affair with his wife. And I thought, all right. So my boss said, look, ring. So I rang, and of course not. So that was fine. He said, rip up that piece of paper. So I took 6 photocopies of it. I gave one to my boss, one into the solicitor. I said, hold on to that. I'll be back. And a year later, when he was least expecting it, I got him to admit to it.
Oh,
and yeah, he was so shocked because he thought it was all done and dusted. And I just got him. And so that was that. But he kept begging to come back. And one day I heard noise. And actually, I thought it was my parrot. I thought he'd got a parrot. And I said, oh, you got a parrot? No. Turns out he had 2 children out there that he'd forgotten to mention.
But that is, I think, one of the biggest red flags you could ever find in your life. So let's move on to the topic of red flags, right?
That is a red flag.
We weren't expecting to hear that now, were
absolutely
you?
not. No, not at this hour of the morning. So we'll come to maybe what our red flags are in just a minute. But do you think sometimes you're in a new relationship, you've just met someone for the first time, sometimes the rose-tinted glasses can hide the red flags? Do you think we're good at spotting them? Are you good at spotting them, Carla?
I'd say yeah, but then again, I think everybody thinks that they are great at spotting a red flag until it's like sitting right in front of you. I will say, I mean, I've been with my partner for 10 years and like there was none of that really going on. Probably a few red flags myself that like he identified.
We're all guilty.
Like, you know, trying to, you know, put up a photo of someone, like a man's arm in the background, and he'd be like, what are you doing? And I was like, it was my cousin. Yeah, really clever, see?
Yeah.
See, yeah.
What about
Just
yourself,
a little
Sam?
bit of-
Could you spot a red flag, do you think?
I feel like now I could. I feel like in the past I've been so like lover boy. I just want to be loved and want to love.
Yes.
That I'm just like pushing it aside, never look at it. But now I can kind of spot them from a mile away.
OK, and let's hear some examples. Elaine, what's your biggest red flag?
Me? Listen, I could have an entire circus circling around my head and I wouldn't even be able to recognise it at this stage. But maybe I would, because there is some things. I think if you have no social media presence at all, that's like, hang on a second, do you even have the right name? Like, I have heard some horror stories. Actually, second families, not beyond the realms of doubt. I met a woman recently in Thailand, and her ex had an entire family that she had never even heard about. Literally, 2 families, kids and all, in 2 separate cities, and got away with it for years. Because that might be an extreme level. But do you think on the advent of social media, etc., and you're dating, that there is perhaps something, if they're not around on Saturday night and Sunday night, that was another one that people told me, because they're probably with their partner, or if they can't come to events with you, they won't photograph with you, that sort of thing. But would that ever be on your radar?
Yeah, I feel like if they don't, not so much social media, but if they're like weird about their phone, or if they won't share their phone, or they're really like secretive about it, that's a massive red flag.
Yeah, they put face down and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think, Carla?
I think as well, if they try and take you, like if it's a bit too early and they try and take you away for the weekend, I'm like,
really?
Yeah, that's becoming a lot more common.
Well, that's almost kind of love bombing. It's like a love bombing thing.
For a weekend away.
It's like love bombing,
I've just been talking to you for 2 weeks. Why are we going to Kilkenny? Like, there's no need. Do you know what I mean?
But why would that be? Is that not something romantic and nice?
You probably have a family at home.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Really?
Like, more times than not, from what I've heard, it's always that. You know, and I actually had a friend, it's quite funny, because she was dating somebody, spent the night together on Friday, got up the next morning, he was going out for one of the GAA matches, so she was like, I'll see you tomorrow, whatever. And the way she left the house, she just remember, you know, you remember the way that you like left the house. So she came over on the Sunday, 2 glasses of like, it was like a Craig David song. There was 2 glasses out and the bottle of rosé was opened. And then when she went upstairs, there was clearly, obviously, makeup all over the pillow. And he was like, that's yours. She was like, I don't wear glitter eyeshadow. That is not my makeup.
Oh.
Yeah.
Not glitter eyeshadow.
I know.
All things.
Yeah. And she was texting me like, how do I handle this? I was like, get your stuff and leave immediately.
Yes.
Immediately. But because they weren't together, she felt like she couldn't just be like, what's the crack with that? I was like, no, you just say, here, listen, I'm like, either we're going to have a conversation now, or can I change? And I was like, and you can bring it up just being like, do you mind if I change the sheets? Because there's like makeup all over it. And then that kind of puts him on the spot.
Yeah.
And he drank your rosé.
It's literally lipstick on your collar
Yes.
moment.
Yeah.
Or the old adages that are actually true. But what about red flags? Are there any green flags? Tina, wise
yes,
person you are.
diamonds and lots of very expensive gifts. They're very green flags.
Okay, for the normal person who quite isn't you.
I don't know. No, green flags. Somebody who's kind, you know, it doesn't matter how good-looking a person is, you know, what they buy you. If they're not kind, it doesn't matter about their looks. Kindness is the most important thing, and that they are putting you first. But the nervous thing is if they put you first too much and they're becoming very possessive about you, that's a big red flag that you need to run. I mean, I was fine until I got married, and then we lived everywhere abroad, but nowhere near family or friends, and would live perfectly happily until family or friends came to visit.
So isolating
And then
someone.
it was, you know, there'd be the moods and the temper. So, yeah.
So love bombing and that sort of
Yeah, yes, love bombing.
Yeah, I personally think a big green flag is when they match your kind of like financial spending. So if two people are generous, they're generous together. Or if you're stingy, that your partner is stingy, because there's nothing worse than one being stingy than being generous. You know, because you just get so mortified.
Stingy is the worst.
Well,
in the
I know, but
world.
I think if you're stingy, you need to be with someone else who's stingy, or else it's going to cause so many arguments.
But if you're stingy financially, and I don't mean like diamonds and stuff like that, I mean like buying you a cup of coffee that are asking
Or
you
like
the
tipping
€3
well.
back.
Yeah, tipping
But
well.
if you're stingy with your finances and that sort of stuff, you're going to be stingy emotionally as well, do you think?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think one of my biggest green flags is that if they are emotionally available, that's one of the biggest things. You know, big red flag, listens to Joe Rogan's podcast. Big green flag, you know, big green flag, emotional availability. And somebody
Listen
who
to
has...
Dermot Whelan's podcast, maybe. I don't know.
But I think a lot of that may have come back to when I was very young. My older brother was 10 years older, and he would say to me when the phone would ring, he'd say, if that's so-and-so, tell them I'm not here. Tell them I'm not here. Because he was dating so many different women. And I, as the 10-year-old, no, he's not here, looking at him. And I think that got into my head just to skim along the surface and never, you know,
commit.
Never commit. I remember even as a child, a young child, I never ever wanted to get married. I just thought, no, why? And I came from the happiest home. But when I hit 30, I thought, oh, to hell. I tried everything else at least once, and I thought, no, I'll do it. And then
Sam, I'm going to ask you mentioned phones a little while ago being secretive, but like, do you think if you have to actually go to the business of checking a partner's phone, then it's done and dusted because the trust is
No,
gone?
I'm a serial phone checker. I will check.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. If you give me a reason to check your phone, then it's, you know, it's not on me. But yeah, like I'd go through a phone and I found stuff in the past. You know, it's a gut feeling. When you have a gut feeling and you go through it and you find something, I don't think it's a bad thing. It's kind of like you're justifying it yourself.
I am hiding my phone from Sam. Never let him on it. Guys, thank you so much for coming on and chatting about love rats. I'm well informed.
There you go. You learn something new every day.
Absolutely. Earlier on, we made some meatballs in the kitchen. Here's how to copy us at home.
Mix your pork and turkey mince in a large bowl, adding in a tablespoon of shallot, garlic, diced apple and some eggs. Prepare your sauce by cooking chorizo with a can of chopped tomatoes and bay leaf, leaving to bubble for about 10 minutes. Fry your meatballs in a drop of vegetable oil and place in a preheated oven until cooked through. Toss your meatballs in tomato sauce, then be sure to serve while hot. Coming up tomorrow, we're chatting to the athlete who swam to victory in the 800 and 1500 metre World Championships. Daniel Whiffen will be telling us all about his Olympic gold medal ambitions.
What are the legalities of splitting ownership of your pets after a split up? Well, we'll be discussing doggy divorce.
Plus, are you suffering from tech neck? We'd advise to help rid neck pain from hours hunched over in front of a computer.
And basic DIY, do you know how to hang a photo on a wall? Well, we'll be showing you how. It's all coming up tomorrow from 9. We have to do a happy birthday.
I do.
Special
I
one.
do a big happy birthday to my dad. It was his birthday yesterday, and his birthday is now in a title of a Beatles song. That's all I'll say.
That's all she'll say. Yeah.
Oh, now I get it. Waka, waka, waka.
Happy birthday, Dad.
OK, have a great birthday.
Texts have been flying in as well all morning. Star signs. Martin, yourself and Jenny are a very good match. Capricorn and Taurus both earth signs and very well grounded. That's according to Pamela. And you're probably
Made
the
for each
happiest
other.
couple I know.
Well,
like
we have
your
our
couple
moments.
goals,
Yeah.
two of you.
Okay.
You really are a couple.
Well, thank goodness it's been confirmed that you're a happy couple.
Yeah.
You know.
We'll see you tomorrow at 9.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Have a great Saturday.